Ryan's office revenge. Aaron didn't even knock. Just walked into my office at 4:47 on a Thursday afternoon, loosening his tie like he'd already mentally checked out for the weekend. The fluorescent lights made his face look washed out. Or maybe that was just the expression of a man about to deliver bad news he didn't want to own. "Ryan," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Got a minute?" "My name is Ryan Morrison. I'm 48 years old, and I've spent the last 22 years in pharmaceutical research after doing my time in the Air Force. If you don't know what biostatistics means, here's the simple version. When drug companies want to prove their medications work, they hire people like me to design the studies, analyze the data, and make sure everything holds up under FDA scrutiny. I was in the middle of reviewing quality assurance reports for the Phase 3 clinical trial that had just wrapped. 16 months of work. My work. Data analysis that would determine whether Apex Pharmaceuticals' newest drug candidate moved forward to FDA submission or died in committee. "Sure, Aaron." I saved my document and turned my chair toward him. He leaned against my doorframe, trying for casual and landing somewhere near uncomfortable. "So, about your performance bonus, the one tied to the trial completion." I waited. Corporate types love doing this thing where they pause dramatically, like they're building suspense for bad news. Corporates doing this thing where they're tightening up on discretionary payouts. "Policy shift." He said it like those two words explained everything. "Policy shift," I repeated. Not a question, just giving him space to keep talking. "Yeah, budget pressures. You know how it is." The executive team decided to reallocate those funds toward next quarter's pipeline development. Across-the-board thing. Nothing personal, nothing personal. Right. Nothing personal about the $45,000 bonus that had been written into my project contract 18 months ago. Nothing personal about the 70-hour weeks I'd put in to make sure our data was bulletproof. Nothing personal about the fact that I'd just delivered results that could generate $500 million in revenue for this company. Aaron was already edging toward the door. "You're a team player, Ryan. I knew you'd understand. Got to run. Leadership meeting in 5. I nodded once. Understood. He looked relieved, gave me a quick smile and a finger gun gesture that made me want to throw my stapler at him. Then he was gone, leaving behind the faint smell of too much cologne and the echo of policy shift. I sat there for a moment, staring at the space where he'd been standing. Then I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a file folder I kept at the very back. Inside was my personal copy of the consulting agreement I'd negotiated before taking this project. The one I'd insisted on. The one that Aaron's predecessor had tried to talk me out of, because it's not how we usually do things. Page 12. Appendix C. Contractor Rights and Remediation Protocols. I read it twice. Once to confirm what I remembered, once to savor what was about to happen. The next morning, I sent one email. 4 lines. No emotion. Just a professional heads up to someone who needed to know. By 10:30 a.m., our senior legal counsel, Jessica Reynolds, was standing in Aaron's office with my contract in her hand and an expression on her face that I'd only seen once before, when someone had tried to submit falsified data to the FDA. Through the glass wall, I watched her flip to page 12, watched her read Appendix C, watched her face change from confused to alarmed to absolutely furious. She looked up at Aaron, who was clearly in the middle of some explanation that involved a lot of hand gestures. Then she said 5 words that made him go pale. "Please tell me you paid him." But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you exactly how a policy shift turned into a legal crisis that cost my company $90,000, triggered an emergency board meeting, and taught an entire executive team why you should always read the contracts your consultants write. I started at major pharmaceutical companies right out of my master's program, after spending 8 years in the Air Force working on radar systems. The military taught me precision, attention to detail, and the importance of following procedures exactly as written. Those habits served me well in pharmaceutical research, where sloppy work can literally kill people. By my mid-40s, I was burned out with big pharma politics and ready for something different. That's when I went independent. Consulting in pharma is a different game. You're brought in for specific projects, usually high-stakes ones, where the company needs expertise they don't have in-house. You work intense hours for defined periods, then you move on. The trade-off is instability. No benefits, no guaranteed income. You're always one contract away from unemployment. So I learned to protect myself. I learned to negotiate contracts that spelled out exactly what I'd deliver, what I'd be paid, and what happened if things went sideways. I also learned from watching other consultants get burned. My old Air Force buddy, Derek Palmer, had a horror story about a tech company that decided his consulting fee was more like a suggestion after he'd delivered a complete system redesign. No contract protection, no recourse. Derek spent 6 months in legal battles and never saw a dime. That wasn't going to happen to me. 18 months ago, Apex Pharmaceutical reached out. They were a mid-sized player in the metabolic disease space, about 800 employees, with a promising pipeline candidate called AP447, a novel treatment for type 2 diabetes that had shown impressive results in early trials. They needed someone to design and oversee their Phase 3 trial. This was the big one. The make-or-break study that would determine whether AP447 made it to market or joined the graveyard of almost drugs that cost fortunes to develop and never reach patients. Their previous biostatistician had left abruptly, pursuing other opportunities, according to the press release, which in pharma speak usually means got fired or quit under pressure. They were 4 months behind schedule and bleeding money. I met with their VP of R&D, a sharp woman named Dr. Sarah Collins, who understood both the science and the business. She laid out the situation. They needed someone who could jump in immediately, salvage the study design, coordinate with clinical sites across 8 countries, and deliver bulletproof data analysis that would survive FDA scrutiny. Timeline: 16 months from contract signature to final report. Compensation: $180,000 base fee, plus a $45,000 performance bonus if we hit all milestones and delivered on time. I said yes, with conditions. I need final authority over statistical methodology and data analysis, I told Sarah. If I'm putting my name on this, I control quality. Done, she said. And I need a remediation clause in the contract. She frowned. What kind of remediation? Protection if the company tries to change terms midstream or interfere with my work. It's standard for my contracts. We're not going to interfere, she said. We need this trial to succeed. Then putting it in writing shouldn't be a problem. She agreed, probably because she was desperate, and I was the 3rd consultant they'd approached. The first 2 had taken one look at their timeline and declined. My attorney drafted the consulting agreement. It was 12 pages long. Most of it was standard stuff: deliverables, payment schedule, intellectual property rights, confidentiality. Appendix C was different. Appendix C, Contractor Rights and Remediation Protocol. Section 3.2, Performance Bonus Guarantee. In the event that contractor completes all specified deliverables within the agreed timeline and to the quality standards outlined in Schedule A, and company subsequently declines to pay the performance bonus specified in Section 2.4 for any reason not explicitly related to contractor's failure to meet deliverables, company shall A. Pay the full bonus amount plus a penalty equal to 100% of said bonus. B. Release contractor from all confidentiality obligations related to the project, excluding patient data and trade secrets as defined by applicable law. C. Grant contractor unlimited rights to discuss the project methodology, results, and company's handling of said results with regulatory agencies, institutional review boards, academic institutions, and industry publications. In plain English, if they didn't pay my bonus after I'd done the work, they'd owe me double. And I could talk about whatever I wanted. Sarah's legal team reviewed it. They pushed back on the penalty clause. 100% is excessive, their attorney said during the negotiation call. We'd agree to 50%. Then find another biostatistician, I replied calmly. One who will take your timeline and your company's history of project management challenges. They blinked first. The contract was signed 3 weeks later. I spent the first month fixing everything the previous consultant had screwed up. The trial design was a mess. Impossible enrollment targets, inadequate statistical power, sloppy data collection protocols. The analysis plan read like it had been written by someone who'd taken one statistics course and thought they understood clinical research. I redesigned everything, worked with Sarah's team to adjust protocols, coordinated with clinical sites, built relationships with the site coordinators who'd actually be collecting data, set up quality control procedures to catch problems early, and I documented everything. Every meeting had notes. Every decision had a paper trail. Every deviation from the original plan was logged with rationale and approvals. This wasn't paranoia. This was professionalism. When you're working with data that could affect millions of patients' lives, you don't trust memory. You trust documentation. The Air Force had beaten that into me during my 8 years of service, and pharma had reinforced it over 22 years of civilian work. The trial launched 6 weeks after I started. Enrollment went smoothly. Data quality was excellent. We hit every interim milestone. The clinical sites respected the procedures I'd put in place. The data was clean, the timelines were realistic, and everyone knew exactly what was expected. 12 months in, Sarah got promoted to Chief Scientific Officer. Her replacement as VP of R&D was Erin Palmer. Erin was younger than me, maybe 42, with an MBA from a decent school and exactly 0 hands-on research experience. He'd come up through business development and strategy roles, the kind of person who talked about optimizing resource allocation and driving operational efficiency. Our first meeting, he spent 20 minutes explaining his vision for streamlining the research organization. "We've been too siloed," he said, clicking through a PowerPoint deck that looked like it had been lifted from a management consulting firm. "We need to break down barriers, create synergies, leverage cross-functional expertise." I nodded politely and wondered what any of that meant for my trial. I found out 3 months later. Erin implemented a new approval process for all project expenditures over $10,000, including my bonus, apparently. He started holding weekly alignment meetings where everyone had to present their progress. These were 3-hour marathons, where Erin would interrupt every 5 minutes to ask how something supported the strategic roadmap. And he started making noises about optimizing headcount and right-sizing contractor relationships. But the trial was still running smoothly. We were 8 months from completion. I kept my head down and did my work. Month 14, we locked the database. This is a major milestone, the point where all data is finalized and you can start final analysis. No more changes. Everything from here is math and interpretation. I spent the next 6 weeks running every analysis specified in our protocol. Primary endpoints, secondary endpoints, safety data, subgroup analyses. I checked my work 3 times, had my assistant check it twice. Every number was solid. Month 16, I delivered the final report. 247 pages of data, analysis, interpretation, and discussion. The results were excellent. AP 447 showed statistically significant improvement in glycemic control compared to placebo, with a safety profile that was actually better than we'd hoped. This was a winning drug. The kind of result that makes executives start calculating market share and revenue projections. I submitted the report to Sarah and to Aaron. I also provided all the raw data, analysis files, and documentation as specified in my contract. 2 weeks later, we had the project closeout meeting. Sarah thanked me personally. The clinical team applauded. Someone had brought cake. Aaron gave a speech about team excellence and exemplifying our values. He thanked everyone by name except me. I was our external statistical consultant in his remarks. No name, just a category. Small thing. Didn't matter. I wasn't there for recognition. I was there for the $45,000 bonus that was now due per my contract. I delivered everything on time, within budget, and at a quality level that would sail through FDA review. Every milestone hit, every specification exceeded. I sent Aaron and Sarah an invoice 2 days later, as specified in my contract. $45,000. Performance bonus. Final deliverables completed. Radio silence. 1 week passed. I followed up via email. Professional tone. Just checking on payment status. Aaron responded, working through approvals. Will update soon. 2 weeks. Another follow-up. His assistant responded this time. Aaron is traveling. Will respond when he returns. 3 weeks. I called his office directly. Got voicemail. Left a message. No callback. 4 weeks after submitting my invoice, Aaron finally showed up at my office with his policy shift. After he left, I sat at my desk for 10 minutes, just thinking. Then I pulled up my master project file, the one I kept on my personal encrypted drive, not the company's network. Everything was there. The contract with Appendix C highlighted, copies of every email, every meeting note, every piece of documentation showing I'd exceeded every expectation. I opened a new email to Jessica Reynolds, Senior Legal Counsel, CC. Dr. Sarah Collins, Chief Scientific Officer. Subject, Contract Compliance Question, AP 447. Project Jessica. I hope this email finds you well. I'm reaching out regarding the performance bonus specified in Section 2.4 of my consulting agreement for the AP 447 Phase 3 trial. Aaron Palmer informed me yesterday that the bonus isn't being paid due to a policy shift regarding discretionary payouts. I wanted to flag this for your awareness, as I believe this may trigger the remediation provisions outlined in Appendix C of our agreement. Could you please review and advise? I have documentation showing completion of all deliverables per contract specifications. Best regards, Ryan. I attached 2 files, the original contract and a summary document listing every deliverable with confirmation of completion dates. Then, I hit send. It was 6:15 p.m. Jessica had probably left for the day. This would sit in her inbox until morning. I went home, fed my cat, made dinner, watched a documentary about Antarctic penguins, went to bed at a reasonable hour. Slept like a baby. Friday morning, I arrived at my office at 7:30 a.m. Earlier than usual, but I wanted to be present for whatever was about to unfold. At 8:47 a.m., Jessica's response popped into my inbox. Ryan, reviewing your contract now. Can you stop by my office at 10 o'clock? This needs immediate attention. Jessica short, professional, with an undertone of "oh shit" that came through even in email format. At 9:15, I saw Jessica walk past my office toward Aaron's, carrying a folder and moving with purpose. At 9:32, I heard raised voices from Aaron's office. Not words, Just intensity. At 9:58, Jessica walked back past my office, made eye contact, and gestured for me to follow. Her office was on the executive floor, nicer than mine. Window with a view, real art on the walls instead of motivational posters. She closed the door behind me and pointed to a chair. "Walk me through this," she said without preamble. "Aaron says you're demanding a penalty payment because of a normal budget reallocation. Tell me your side." I told her, calmly, factually, the contract terms, the successful delivery, the delayed payment, Aaron's explanation about policy shifts. Jessica listened without interrupting. When I finished, she opened the folder on her desk. My contract. She flipped to page 12. Read Appendix C. Read it again, slower. Then she picked up her phone and called Aaron's extension. "My office, now." She hung up without waiting for a response. Aaron arrived 3 minutes later, trying to project confidence but falling short. "Jessica, I think there's been a miscommunication." She cut him off. "Did you read Ryan's contract before you told him his bonus wasn't being paid? I don't read every consultant contract line by line. We have templates. This isn't a template." She turned the contract toward him. "Did you see Appendix C?" He glanced at the page. "What about it? Read section 3.2 out loud." Aaron's face changed as he read. Started confident. Ended somewhere near panic. "This can't be enforceable," he said. "It's completely enforceable," Jessica replied. "It's crystal clear, signed by authorized representatives, and directly addresses the exact situation you just created." "What situation?" "I just said we were reallocating budget. You declined to pay a contracted performance bonus after Ryan completed every deliverable," Jessica interrupted. "That triggers remediation, which means you just cost this company $90,000 instead of $45,000. Aaron went pale. "Wait. And that's the least of our problems." Jessica turned to me. "Ryan, under Section 3.2b, you're now released from confidentiality obligations. Correct? Regarding project methodology and results. Yes. Meaning you could discuss our trial design, our data, and our handling of this situation with regulatory agencies, academic institutions, industry publications? That's what the contract says." Aaron found his voice. "You'd actually do that? Sabotage the trial?" "I wouldn't be sabotaging anything," I said calmly. "I'd be exercising rights you contractually granted me. Big difference." Jessica closed her eyes briefly. "Aaron, please tell me the bonus approval wasn't actually denied. Tell me this was just a misunderstanding about timing." Silence. "We haven't processed the payment yet," Aaron admitted. "Then process it today. Full amount plus the penalty. And hope Ryan is feeling generous about the confidentiality release. We can't just—" "Aaron," Jessica's voice was cold. "You're about to understand something about pharmaceutical development. We just spent $35 million on a Phase 3 trial. That trial generated excellent results. Those results will support an FDA submission worth potentially $500 million a year in revenue." She tapped my contract. "Ryan owns joint rights to that data. If remediation is triggered, he can publish it. He can discuss it. He can consult for our competitors using insights from our trial." Aaron's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "So we have two options," Jessica continued. "Pay him $90,000 and beg him nicely to waive the confidentiality release, or pay him $90,000, lose control of our own data, and hope the FDA doesn't start asking uncomfortable questions about why our lead biostatistician is suddenly giving talks about AP 447 at academic conferences." "This is extortion," Aaron managed. "No," I said quietly. "This is a contract you didn't read before violating it." Jessica looked at me. "Are you willing to waive the confidentiality release if we make you whole?" I thought about it. Let the silence stretch. That depends, I finally said. On what? On whether Aaron apologizes. Aaron looked like I'd asked him to swallow glass. For what? For wasting 3 weeks of my time chasing payment, for treating a contractual obligation like a discretionary favor, for not even using my name when you thanked the team. The room was very quiet, for thinking policy shift was an acceptable reason to break a contract. Jessica looked at Aaron. Waiting. I apologize, Aaron muttered. Look at me when you say it. He met my eyes. I apologize for the delay and for how I handled this. Good enough. If I receive full payment plus penalty by end of business today, I'll waive the confidentiality release. But I want it in writing. Amendment to the original contract, signed by Jessica and Sarah. Done, Jessica said immediately. I'll have the paperwork ready by noon. She looked at Aaron. You need to leave now, and when you get back to your office, you're going to send an email to finance authorizing immediate payment of $90,000 to Ryan Morrison. No delays, no approvals. Just process it. Aaron left without another word. Rachel turned to me. I owe you an apology too. This shouldn't have happened. You weren't the one who made it happen, I pointed out. No, but I'm the one who should have caught it earlier. She closed the contract. How many other consultants have agreements like this? I don't know about others, but every contract I've signed for the last 10 years has similar protection clauses. Most companies never trigger them because most companies pay what they promise. Smart, she admitted. Expensive for us, but smart. The payment hit my account at 3:47 p.m., all $90,000. Jessica sent over the signed amendment waiving the confidentiality release in exchange for the penalty payment. I signed it and sent it back. Then I packed up my office. My contract was complete. I had no reason to stay. Sarah called me that evening. Ryan, I just heard what happened. I'm mortified. Not your fault. I should have caught it. Should have been watching the payment approvals. Aaron's been difficult lately, but that's not an excuse. It's done now. No lasting damage. Except you're leaving, and we need someone like you for the Phase 4 trials. We negotiated for 2 weeks. The new contract was better. Higher rate, clearer terms, and a clause that explicitly prohibited anyone in R&D from unilaterally changing payment terms. I also made them add something new. A provision that required written justification for any payment denial, subject to review by both legal and finance. Sarah signed it personally. I worked on Apex's Phase 4 program for another 8 months. Good work, proper compensation, no drama. Aaron left the company 4 months after the bonus incident. Officially, he was pursuing opportunities in strategic consulting. Unofficially, he'd pissed off enough people that his position became untenable. His replacement was an experienced researcher who'd spent 20 years running trials. First thing she did was review all consultant contracts and make sure payment terms were being honored. Smart. But Aaron's problems didn't end when he left Apex. Word travels fast in pharmaceutical circles, and the story of how he'd triggered a $90,000 penalty by not reading a contract spread through industry networks. When he applied for similar positions at other companies, references started coming back lukewarm. Solid strategic thinker, one former colleague told a potential employer, but had some issues with contractor management and attention to detail. Within 18 months, Aaron had moved from pharmaceutical R&D management to a mid-level business development role at a much smaller company. Last I heard, he was making about 40% less than what he'd been earning at Apex. His LinkedIn profile still listed all his credentials, but the trajectory was clear to anyone who knew how to read between the lines. Meanwhile, my reputation in the industry got a significant boost. A few months after I finished at Apex, I got a call from a colleague at a competitor company. "Ryan, I heard you had some excitement at Apex with a bonus dispute. It got resolved. I heard you had it resolved before it started. Contract clause that made it expensive to screw you over." That led to 3 more consulting gigs, all with similar protective clauses. None of them ever got triggered, because when you make it expensive to break contracts, people don't break them. 2 years after the Apex situation, I was invited to speak at a pharmaceutical industry conference about clinical trial management. I gave a presentation about data quality and statistical integrity. Then someone in the audience asked about consultant relationships. "What's your advice for protecting yourself as an independent contractor?" I thought about Aaron's face when Jessica made him read Appendix C. 3 things, I said. First, get everything in writing. If it's not in the contract, it doesn't exist. Second, understand that some companies will test boundaries. They'll try to renegotiate after the fact, delay payments, or change terms midstream. Don't let them. And third, build enforcement mechanisms into your contracts, not because you want to use them, but because when they exist, you usually don't have to. The audience laughed, but I wasn't joking. A few people came up afterward asking for copies of my contract templates. I shared the basic structure, but told them to get their own legal counsel to customize it. Last year, my grandson Lucas asked me about the story. He's studying engineering, thinking about going into medical device development. "Grandpa, Dad told me about your contract thing, the one where you made them pay double. Isn't that kind of mean?" "Lucas, if someone promises you $100 for painting their house, you paint the house perfectly, and then they say, 'Sorry, policy change, we're only paying $50. What would you do? Be mad?" "Right. Now, what if before you started painting, you'd written a contract that said, 'If you don't pay the $100, you owe $200, and I get to keep the paint.'" "Brushes?" He thought about it. "Then they'd probably just pay the $100. Exactly. That's not mean. That's smart. You're not hoping they'll break the promise. You're making sure they don't." These days, when young professionals ask me for career advice, I tell them about Aaron's face when Jessica made him read Appendix C. About the moment he realized that policy shift wasn't a magic phrase that erased obligations. And I tell them this: loyalty doesn't mean letting people take advantage of you. Professionalism doesn't mean accepting whatever you're offered. Being a team player doesn't mean playing by rules that only apply to you. It means doing excellent work, delivering what you promise, and making sure the other side does too. Aaron learned that lesson at a cost of $90,000. Most people can learn it cheaper. All they have to do is read the contract. Because here's the ultimate truth that took me 22 years to fully understand. Respect isn't given. It's negotiated up front and enforced consistently. The moment you let someone break their word without consequences, you've taught them exactly how much your work is worth to them, which is nothing.